Hi, folks. I want to welcome you to our plenary session, and I just want to give a shout out. That was a beautiful video of Kansas City, and I'm missing it very much. My name is Mary Hendrickson. I'm coming to you from my spotless office here at the University of Missouri. The hot weather just broke for us here in Missouri, and it would have been a beautiful, beautiful time to visit Kansas City. It's about 70 degrees here, and it's our first fall-like day. And so, we're going to hang out here for just a minute or so as the panel gets ready for our plenary, and we have a real treat in store for us. As you join the room, I hope that you've been really stimulated today in this this first full day of our plenary. And as you join the room, I'm wondering if you might put in the chat box, what's the most insightful thing you've learned today? Or from the plenary last night. I know that plenary was just absolutely amazing last night too. I'm not going to subject you to any really bad jokes, although I was encouraged to tell jokes and I'm terrible at it. Instead, I'm going to introduce to you the moderator of our next session. And this is going to be a really amazing session on power from people to policy. Our moderator will be Winona Bynum. She's a native Detroiter and currently is the executive director of the Detroit Food Policy Council. She comes from a background of public health and dietetics, and she uses that to really think about how we can create and maintain fair, equitable, and sustainably operating food systems in Detroit and lots of other places as well. She's a registered dietitian, and this year she is the chair of the National Organizations of Blacks and Dietetics. So that's wonderful. And as you saw, she's also served as the president of the Southeast Michigan Dietetic Association. So she has had some wonderful leadership roles, really bringing community into dietetics. I'm not sure, though, Winona, how you would feel about my husband. He grew up in Flint, and he loves Detroit-style conies, but he doesn't get them very often. So during our time on the design team, the thing I most appreciated about Winona was her calm presence and her real thoughtful way of looking at the issues we were discussing from multiple perspectives. But at the heart, she's always thinking about people and communities first and foremost. So I'm going to turn it over to Winona to moderate this next plenary session. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, so from power from people to policy. This session is really going to be, I'm looking forward to this discussion. So at its most basic level, food policy councils, our work is to make the food system better, right? But better for whom and better how? Those are two huge questions that we all are being called to confront. And really the answers depend on who is at the table. So this plenary session is going to bring together some amazing leaders on food policy councils who are going to talk about their experiences in bringing community and partnering with organizations that are not part of the Food Policy Council, and talk about some of those challenges and achieving those kind of goals and balancing really tackling big issues like systemic issues like racism and poverty and bringing social justice and food justice to the fore, along with immediate food policy issues like increasing SNAP and some of the other programs. So our objectives today are really to learn how food policy councils from a diverse areas, rural, indigenous, Black, Latinx, low income, Southern, etc., are working to be accountable partners in supporting the needs of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and poor communities. We're going to listen to their stories about their processes from building civic power with non-member partner organizations, and again, bringing in those community members that are so important. We want to understand how food policy councils are using shared values to guide the transformation of their work, to center their voices of the most impacted people by the food system and address those systemic issues. explore the values of networks to build, leverage, and confront traditional power structures. And most importantly, we want to hear from them, from the BIPOC-led and centered food policy, BIPOC-led and centered food policy councils, so that we can hear their stories directly. And the hope is that the stories that you hear today will resonate with you. We'll be able to talk more about them, that you'll take this home and think about it when you're engaging in your work, and that we'll be able to reach out to one another and really be able to share our experiences so that we can move this work forward in a way that it really helps our communities and serves their needs in a way that honors them. So I'll just introduce our speakers really briefly because I want you to hear more of their stories. And I'm just going to introduce them in alphabetical order by their last name. So first, Michael Banner. He's from Island CultureZ, North Carolina, and he's a native, a lifelong resident of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We also have Sona Desai, who is a co-director at the San Diego Food Systems Alliance in California. Helga Garza from New Mexico, of the Agri-Cultura Cooperative Network. And then Dr. Diego Thompson from Mississippi State University. So with that, I'd actually like to get right into the questions. Jump right in. So this one, I'm going to start with Sona. And can you tell us a little bit about your organization and its approach to centering community?
Sure, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Winona. I am really honored and humbled to be here with you all today. Again, my name is Sona Desai. I am a co-executive director of the San Diego Food System Alliance, and I'm speaking to you all from unceded Kumeyaay land, also called or known as San Diego. And our mission, like probably many of yours, is to cultivate a healthy, sustainable, and just food system in San Diego County. For us, this, our journey into this space, I think, is really important to also share. Since our inception over 10 years ago, the leadership and most participants within our network have been predominantly white and have held privileged positions of power, like executive directors or other leadership positions within organizations. It's really only recently, in the past 3 years, that our organization has truly updated our operating strategy to reflect a more community-centered approach. And we have also cultivated a diverse board of directors with over 50% people of color, majority POC-led staff, and a growing POC and community-led network. So I share that because our work to center the community and build a community-centered and anti-racist organization is still very much in the early stages. So for us, centering community ultimately means shifting power. Our approach to shifting power has really been to cultivate relationships, intentional, trusting, reciprocal, and long-term relationships with our community. And with our community, we mean farmers, fishermen, food and farm workers, food business owners, organizers, residents, and of course, primarily those that are most impacted by inequities within the food system. Tribal nations within San Diego County have also been a critical part of our approach to centering community and really recognizing the time that it takes to nurture those relationships and build trust. But it is through these relationships that we feel that we're transitioning our organizational leadership, and we're creating greater accountability and ultimately, hopefully, planting the seeds for true community ownership. And over the past few years, we have worked with these same communities to co-create a 10-year vision for our region's food system. And this vision we see as belonging to the community, and the community sees this as belonging to them. So as we move towards implementation in the next few years, we really see our community, those most impacted by inequities within the food system, being the leaders that will steward this vision and develop a community-led policy agenda and create food policy leadership development program that will ensure that the community is always leading this vision, our collective vision for the food system in San Diego County. So, just to sort of summarize that, I think our approach really is about shifting power, and we see shifting power as integral to achieving our mission and living our values.
Well, thanks so much, Sona. You said a lot there. I love that. And it's so important to hear about people's journeys at all stages of their work. So love that. And Diego, can I just ask you the same question?
It's a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. So I'm located at Starkville, Mississippi. I work in Mississippi State University. I'm an assistant professor in sociology. I'm also a Mississippi resident. I am originally from Uruguay, South America, so my Southern accent is not from Southern US, it's from the south of South America. And since I moved here to Mississippi in 2017, I've been involved in different food system initiatives. Currently, I'm a member of the Mississippi Food Policy Council and also a member of the Octibaja Food Policy Council. I've been involved in these two organizations for a few years. To start answering this question, I would like to tell you a little bit about Mississippi, for those who are not familiar with this state. So in Mississippi, we find very contradictory realities, many contradictions like in other agricultural regions in the US. We have very rich agricultural regions, such as the Mississippi Delta, for example, very productive regions. We have many natural resources that could provide healthy and fresh food. But unfortunately, we have in some regions of the state the highest food insecurity rates in the country, the highest obesity rates in the country, and also related problems to these statistics related to health. We also have many disadvantaged and limited resource farmers, mostly Black farmers, who struggle to survive and also to make a living in this state. So it is under this food landscape that the Mississippi Food Policy Council and the Octibaja Food Policy Council have been working in Mississippi. The Mississippi Food Policy Council has experienced some changes lately in the last few years in terms of its composition, increasing the number of members and including members with different racial, ethnic, and different experiences. Currently, the board is very diverse and includes people working in different areas and regions of Mississippi food systems, but with the common and shared vision of making racially equitable, environmentally sustainable, and economically just policy and contributions to the changes of Mississippi food system that could benefit all Mississippians, all Mississippi residents. After listening to Mississippi communities of color, including farmers, fishermen, food chain workers, grassroots environmental justice activists, and community cultural workers, the Mississippi Food Policy Council started conversations about how the food policy could engage in transformative processes to build capacity of the council and also our communities, and to inform transformative policy that could ideally result in structural changes. So in the last few years, we have been mainly working on building our own capacity and building the capacity of community leaders in different regions of Mississippi. And today, the main mission of the Mississippi Food Policy Council is to invest in building the capacity of Mississippians to transform the food system that we have. In the case of the Octibaja Food Policy Council, which is located here in Starkville and covers the northeast part of Mississippi, the board was originally initiated by scholars from Mississippi State University, but always with involvement of different organizations that were locally and actively involved in working with low-income families of color and limited resource farmers, mostly Black farmers. The monthly meetings of this Food Policy Council have been always open to the community, with participation of both community residents and members of the university. And this has facilitated many partnerships between the community organizations involved. The involvement of limited resource farmers and local organizations working on food and housing security, especially working with low-income families of color in this region, have represented a substantial foundation for this Food Policy Council in the Northeast region of Mississippi. And recently, this Food Policy Council partnered with the United Community Agri-Cultura Cooperative, which is composed mostly by limited resource farmers. And now the Food Policy Council is called Food Policy Council UCAC, which is the abbreviation for this organization. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Diego. You know, when you were talking, I was really struck by the fact that so much of what you described can describe so many places. I see similarities here in Detroit and Michigan, and I'm sure so many of us listening right now can see those similarities and really make those same connections. And also, both you and Sona talking about being intentional and really trying to transform and shift power. That's so powerful. So I want to talk a little bit about implications of policy change efforts and how, you know, you may be prioritizing community input and impact in your council's work. And Helga, I want to start with you. And if you would you also say a little bit about your organization? And we're not hearing you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me now? Hello? Am I heard?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. My name is Helga Garza, and I am the Executive Director of Agri-Cultura Cooperative Network, located in what is known as the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Our cooperative and network is a cooperative of 36 small-scale organic farmers. We aggregate together to meet larger markets and work on procurement policy change within state agencies for local investment in food development. For us here, I mean, when I talk about Agri-Cultura Network and I talk about the South Valley has a long history in agricultural production, small-scale traditional farming. So it is embedded and rooted in our history. When I talk about the South Valley, I am an active South Valley resident. And I do represent the community that I come from. For us in Agri-Cultura Network, we are a bottom-up approach to sustainable and regenerative food justice. Early on, our farmers forming the cooperative, the mission was and still is to keep our food local in access and distribution and keep building the capacity of our farmers for our long haul vision of becoming a sustainable food state. The other thing that, another hat that I wear is I am the chair of the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council. The Policy Council is celebrating 20 years this year, and it's been a long road for that Policy Council. I've been active in it for the past 5 years, and I got invited to the table because of the impact we were having in community benefits, in economic activity, in job creation, and most importantly, in that bigger vision of becoming a sustainable food state. We here in the South Valley, and again, I say I was invited to the table because that's how it happened. This is a policy council that is going through a paradigm shift. It has been historically white-led, and very few people of color ever invited to the table. It has had a highlight and advocacy work for large-scale farms, big agriculture, which works on the paradigm shift of small-scale organic farmers that are trying to keep production local and build capacity of that sustainable food system that we are making change in. As chair of the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council, first thing, I collectively led together with the rest of the governing board was to put values, mission, purpose, goals that we could all align ourselves with. Do we align on this or not? And if we don't align, let's get into the discussion. If we do align, let's get into the discussion. It hasn't been an easy place for a Native woman of color that comes from a frontline community and has led it, a farming network and enterprise, hasn't been easy at all to address root cause effects of poverty, of systemic racism. All of those pieces that, as a person coming from a frontline community, when we started our cooperative, there was no model for us to follow. This came from the self-determination of people. This came from our ability to navigate systems, but always keeping our narrative, what works for our community, and never being in a place where we are just sitting there, not occupying the space, right? Or being tokenized. So that is the strength and the leadership that we are working with here as I lead Agri-Cultura Cooperative Network and as I chair the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm struck, and when we were first meeting for the first time, I was really struck by how the work can look different if your organization was founded and always led by BIPOC leaders, as opposed to trying to shift that power. And so really appreciate you sharing your experience in that and how that work, what that work looks like, some of what that work looks like. I also was, really struck by you talking about the bottom-up approach, because we all know that top-down doesn't work. So we need to make sure that the people who are most impacted are the ones who are able to help direct and really design solutions. So thank you so much. So now, looking at that, we talked about how it may be to balance work, right? So we have these deep systemic issues that we need to work on, but we also have our day-to-day needs, like those people need to have food today while we're working on these long-term issues. I'm going to go to you, Diego, first and just ask how you are able to balance those systemic issues like working on racism and poverty with more immediate priorities in your work?
Thanks, Winona. I think that's a great question. So structural racism, poverty, and the food needs of communities are often strongly correlated, interconnected, right? I think, and this is based on what I have observed working in food policy councils here in Mississippi. I think that once food policy councils have established a clear vision and mission that aims to dismantle racial and socioeconomic inequalities in the food systems that perpetuate food insecurity and other problems among disadvantaged groups, the work will be focused on structural changes, such as policy changes, but centering on the immediate needs of our communities or our community members. In the case of the Mississippi Food Policy Council, all members are actively involved in local or regional changes that deal with immediate community needs. The same happens here with the Octavia Baja Food Policy Council, where there are members and community residents assisting the needs of our community residents in this region of Mississippi. The Mississippi Food Policy Council is also a member of the Mississippi Food Justice Collaborative. So we are working with partner organizations to build their capacities along with ours to center racial equity, economic justice, environmental justice, labor and human rights, healthy communities, and also other things that could contribute to transform Mississippi's food systems. So in both experiences, the Mississippi Food Policy Council and the Octavia Baja Food Policy Council, I think we are developing people-centered food systems agendas, thinking in structural changes, such as policy changes, but also nurturing local changes and solutions through social relationships or new social relationships and partnerships. So I think, in summary, I think that closely working with community members who are actively involved in local matters, it is impossible to ignore the immediate needs of communities of color who in this state, in our case, represent a great percentage of our population. Thank you.
Again, thank you. I'm going to go right back to Helga. I'm going to ask you that same question. You touched on it a little bit, but can you give us a little bit more about how you balance those two things, that immediate and the long term? Okay, Helga, if you can unmute.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Well, to me, I think it's anchored in addressing root cause effects and root cause effects of hunger, root cause effects of poverty. Through the local investment, those are the pieces that we are addressing. But we have to stay also very in tune with what's happening at the policy level. For us, in addressing those root cause effects that I'm talking about, and as we're doing procurement policy change for local investment among state agencies at that state level of funding, we also have to make sure that it is going to those farmers that have been part of the procurement policy change, investment, strategy, advocacy work that has been taking part in our state for the past 15 years, and making sure that it stays equitable. And how is it being equitable? Are the majority of small-scale farmers, and I heard the word again, disadvantaged groups. And again, when we talk and take it into our narrative, and this is how we balance it, is we don't look at ourselves as disadvantaged communities or disadvantaged farmers. We look at ourselves as people of knowledge, people of resilience, and again, that self-determination to find our path that works for our communities and our generations, intergenerational approach. When we talk about disadvantaged groups, for us, when people say, and USDA is one of the biggest ones that started that language, when they address us as disadvantaged, even in the zoning, I'm saying we're disadvantaged. If you're looking at us disadvantaged, why? Because our land was stolen. Our land was taken. Our water was made into a capitalist commodity, and our seeds have been contaminated. And we're bringing all of that back by working and addressing these systemic issues. Right now, our policy council, and this has come up through these years of working and trying to keep our policy council accountable, is we're going through a racial equity training, and it's just not, let's just check off the box and, oh yeah, we took racial equity training. No, it is interwoven into a 10-year strategic plan. And I think these are very necessary steps in addressing historical bias, because that's where we got to start. When you're making a shift from, again, from that small group that control the power to bringing in community members, people of color, the ones that are the most affected all the time, and bringing in our strategy, our strength, our collaborations, and our knowledge, I think has to be really strategic. Working with community members, working with nutritionists, we work with health institutions, we work with public education, we work with senior programs, we work with farmers at a lot of different capacities. It takes all of that working together to make change. Yes, we're the policy council, we're the farming entity, but these two can't do it on their own either. We need the community to come and support us as well. And we need that strength of civic engagement. We need that intergenerational approach to educating, the mindset, and also acknowledging. Folks need to acknowledge that historical bias. And it gets very uncomfortable for a lot of people just to hear those realities of generational historical bias. Those are all pieces that come up front. And how do we balance that? By living our life daily and making those changes, not only in this policy realm, but also within our communities, within our families, and within our earth and everything it takes to grow food. Thank you.
Oh, Helga, that was powerful. I really, so many things that you said, just really, if you could see me, I was just nodding, like, yes. And it's so, our words are important, right? And our narrative, being the author of our narrative is important too. And just, like you said, working the day-to-day, that is how we make that balance. So love that. Oh, thank you. Okay, so before we leave that question, I want to go to Sona and ask you if you could just chime in again also about how you make that balance between the long term and the day-to-day.
Yeah, thank you, Winona. And yeah, really resonating with your words, Helga. Really resonating with those words in this moment. So this is a really important question, and I think we talk about this a lot at our organization, and I think this really gets at the heart of transforming our food system and society as a whole. Confronting the root causes of inequality and strengthening the public safety net are both essential. We see them as both essential. In our work, we try to follow the lead of our community and their needs and aspirations. And taking the example of increasing food assistance benefits, this is clearly desired and clearly necessary. But from our community, those that have been most impacted by inequities, those that do hold knowledge that is not brought to the table, what we hear from them is that they are seeking larger and more transformational shifts that promote greater agency and ownership of their food system. So confronting those root causes of inequality is paramount. It really is the space that we need to be working in, and that's what is going to lead to true transformation. How we balance it, even I think our strongest action has been to make the decision to lead with race across all issue areas. So anytime we're looking at policy priorities, balancing the systemic changes needed with short-term priorities, we always make the decision to lead with race. So with short-term solutions like increasing food assistance benefits, even that, leading with race in the hopes that that will help us move closer to addressing the larger systemic issues and moving towards dismantling racism. We also, like Helga had mentioned, we also really work to shift the narrative and to educate policymakers, funders, those within positions of power, the broader community around the root causes of food and nutrition insecurity, which is rooted in poverty, which is rooted in low wages and unemployment, which is rooted in racism, and which is the result of deliberate policies. So that shifting of the narrative is really a key strategy for balancing some of these larger systemic issues with the immediate needs within the community. We also try to describe, how food and nutrition insecurity are linked to physical, mental, and emotional challenges also within communities, how in particular Black, Indigenous, and people of color are disproportionately impacted, and the impacts of longstanding trauma that are really present across various communities. So while we see increasing food assistance benefits as important in the short term, we really believe that we cannot transform our food system and heal communities and heal ourselves without addressing income and wealth inequality and dismantling racism and white supremacy.
All right. Okay, you all said a lot. And I'm hearing some themes here. I'm hearing about narrative change. We're in Detroit are also doing some narrative change work. Until we start to look at things differently and make our communities or get other people to look at things differently and just question the day-to-day language that we use. Like Helga talked about disadvantage. Who's disadvantaged and what does that really mean, and digging into that. Also working across disciplines. You all touched on that. The importance of having, and that's what food policy councils do, right? We have different people at the table, people talking. So often we talk to the same folks, right? But being able to talk across disciplines, that is powerful. And then bringing in community, or community being there and being there at the beginning and helping to design, and everything being community focused, community centered. Oh, you all. And what I'm really excited about is that we're from different places in the country. We're from different types of communities, and we are all having common themes. So that's really powerful. I like to bring Michael into the conversation, and also I'm going to put the panel on notice. I may be asking you all to chime in on a couple of questions. So if you do, don't be surprised. But I want to bring Michael into the conversation. Michael, if you could tell us a little bit about your organization and also what are the challenges? We've been talking about implementing approaches and designing them, but what are some of the challenges in implementing an approach that centers on community?
Good evening. Much appreciation. I'm very honored and privileged to be in this space, learning from some of the giants in this food work. And my name is Michael Banner. I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, from the island community. And our community and our city is not much different from Detroit and Mississippi, some of the cities you've named prior. We're facing very low or very high food insecurity and, low land retention. And, the policy is just everything's slanted to go in favor of the status quo. And I think a challenge in centering community in this city has been the overwhelming poverty. We're ranked at the bottom of the country as far as our ability to mobilize through poverty. And if we're born poor, you're likely going to die poor if you're Black in Winston-Salem. So, we've really been strapped with that poverty, not being able to have the proper land access or even the proper knowledge. Even the cooperative extension has long history with racism and excluding Black people from, really the growing, and even up to today, everything is very segregated with these terms, whether it's urban, rural, or whether it's, like you said, disadvantaged or marginalized. It's always these terms and these designations that keep us from getting to the equality of everything. So it has been a challenge trying to remain in the center of the work. In Winston-Salem, I was very instrumental in doing a lot of grassroots activity on the ground to really push urban farms to the forefront and, make this call towards, how important it is to build resilience in our community and, start producing our own food. And from that push, like I said, my nose is all the way to the grindstone. So, when I look up, I see, a lot of policy people, a lot of other community coming out, and some academic people. And I think that's part of it. Like when you're really in the struggle, a lot of times, it's so hard to maintain day to day, just keeping food on the table and keeping your bills paid. You don't really have the luxury to get out and do what we're doing here, just socialize and get familiar with other facets of your work. So even to this day, I'm still learning like exponentially. Every day I'm learning, different aspects of this work. And, trying to really translate that and transfer that to the people. This knowledge is what makes having a food council so important. I was named the inaugural chair of the Winston-Salem's Food Council. So out of that grassroots work, when they finally made a call to put together a council, I was included after much pushing. And once I got on the council, it just let me know just how disinvested the city really is in really upholding the values of food equity. And, as probably any other city, they do a lot more patting on the back and congratulating of themselves and trying to rush to the front of the line than actual digging their heels in and trying to push this critical mass of poverty forward. You know what I mean? So it hadn't been a lot of substantial investment from the city with the urban farming. It's been in name mostly. They did allow for ordinance where we were allowed to do agriculture in some of these abandoned plots where if we do a site plan and give $25 to the planning committee and we pass all the checks and everything, they allow for growing in a property for a year. Of course, anybody would know that's not going to be really adequate in alleviating the hunger pains of the community. So outside of the Winston-Salem Urban Agriculture or the Urban Food Council, our community went ahead and started our own food council, and it's still budding. We're gonna have to do some things to really get the activity and the excitement up about it. Our people in the community have really been more concerned with eating than the actual politics behind, getting that food from seed, into a earth, onto, a vine, onto a table, you know what I'm saying, and through the chain. So we're really looking at doing our community approach and incentivizing people to participate with this food council. We're calling in urban farmers right off, people who, have shown interest in growing food, but maybe haven't had the land access to really flourish. We're trying to bond together, all of us and any food preparers and anybody who's interested in food. We're calling out to this population to try to pull them into building this food policy council. And with it, we look to spin off some cooperative activity, some city hall presence. When things hit the floor, we want to be able to advocate for the community, and policy. Just as Helga was mentioning earlier, we're on their trail as well as doing trying to put some work together as far as the food purchasing and the procurement and the whole land access piece. So yes, it has been a challenge, but it's happened very organically. We haven't lost any of the narrative. We walk with it every day. So that's the advantage we have. It's not like we dipping in and out of the work. It's definitely building some traction, and we're very encouraged in turning this thing around. So like everyone was saying early, no returning to normal. That's something that's emblazoned on us, and that's something that we mean from our core. So that's really the gist of our work right now with the Food Policy Council.
Oh, that's great. And, when you were talking about some of those challenges, well, a colleague of mine, we were at a community meeting, and he talks about how one of our community members said that it's hard to be strategic when your hair is on fire. And I walk with that every day. I think about that, how if you are trying to meet your basic needs, this can seem like a privilege, or that's something that seems out of reach, to sit around and talk about long-term issues when you're just meeting your and your family's basic needs. But like you talked about, continuing to walk with it, continuing and being steady and just being present and daily there. That's so important. Diego, I'd love to get your take on that same question about some of the challenges that you've encountered in implementing.
Thanks, Winona, and thanks, Michael, for sharing that. That's amazing. So I first of all, I think that after listening to Helga, made me think that maybe we should be focusing on the strengths and the resources that we have in place instead of looking at the challenges, right? And when we use a food sovereignty perspective to look at structural changes in the food system, I think that we always have to highlight the strengths and the resources that we all have in our places where we live, in our communities, that could contribute to positive changes, right? But we do face challenges. I think that one of the main challenges that logistically probably all of us experience working on food system changes is that people don't have time, and we all have other responsibilities to attend. So to get people who have the time to work on these changes is one of the main challenges. And I think this has been worsened during the pandemic, which has impacted everybody, but particularly communities of color. And in our particular context, thinking in Mississippi, I think the main challenge is racial and economic inequalities and disparities that have existed for a long time. And to have, perhaps more importantly, one of the main challenges is to have policies implemented to address them, to successfully promote and have policy changes implemented that could lead to local and more equitable food systems in Mississippi, capable of facilitating fresh and healthy food for low-income communities and communities of color, while also benefiting other groups of color, like workers of the food system, farm workers, workers at chicken plants here in central Mississippi, and limited resource farmers and fishermen. So we can work on great initiatives sometimes promoted by community residents and community members, but not having governmental and also other institutional support that could have been in place a long time ago, could represent a challenge for food policy change or changes in the food system, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to shift a little bit and this next question, but ask how the community was included in the formation and development of your council. I'm going to start with Michael, but I'm going to ask all of the panel members to be thinking about that. And if I could just come to you briefly, and if you weren't started with community members and you are shifting to that, that's fine. Just like to get an idea of where everybody is, but I'm going to start with Michael.
Indeed. Really, the community really has been, the the catalyst behind this whole urban farming movement in Winston-Salem. So, we've been very essential in this whole unfolding of the work. So it hasn't been a moment that we haven't been influential in the landscape of the work. So it started off very organic, as I said earlier. It started like right in a lot that we had taken liberties to start growing food in, and the landlord always let the grass grow waist high, and people throw all types of stuff into the lot. But as soon as we started taking an interest in growing food, now all of a sudden he wanted to, wait till right at harvest time and cut the food down to the ground. So, everyone, other community, and everyone who knew of what was happening was very up in arms about it, and they could very much relate to, being made to feel like they're of no value, and that kind of allowed us to gain the confidence of the people and the relations with the people to really feel like we have their best interests at heart. But the politicians have been very, very heavy-handed in trying to keep ownership of what has been a grassroots effort. So we just do our best to control the narrative and take a lot of pictures, make a lot of videos, write posts. But anytime that we think we're taking it easy, our adversaries or our open enemy is working 3 and 5 times harder with, 500% of the capacity we have. So we have to be very strategic and really like take up these spaces. So our advantage is we're of the community. We stay here. Our neighbors flank each side of the gardens, and we have we actually eat this food. We prepare this food in front of everybody. So certain things that they can't take from us. So we're in a very good place.
Thanks. Okay, so you know what? I may switch. I'm going to shift gears again on you. So you are off the hook about everybody answering that question. We're getting some questions from attendees, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to address those. But I do have one other question that we have prepared, and I'm going to give this to Sona. So what advice do you have for councils who are trying to launch with a community focus, or councils that are working to shift membership focus towards community? And what would you wish you had done better?
Thank you for that question. Okay, I can try to be concise with this. So, I mean, there's so much we're learning. As Michael even said, we're continuing to learn every day. I feel it feels I feel really held in this space as we're learning, how to actually work successfully with our community and work to transform our food system here in San Diego County. I think for me, advice, the top things that come to mind are cultivating trusting, meaningful, and reciprocal relationships. I mean, all three of those adjectives are really critical there. Trust is so important, meaningful, and reciprocal. This is really something that we've learned along the way from our community partners. And so that, I think, is one piece. The second is listen and follow the lead of our Black and Brown communities. I think that's really simple, but yet it's something that can sometimes feel harder to put into practice. And then finally, making a sustained commitment to going well beyond engagement, community engagement, and really moving towards community ownership. I think that is really something that we have learned along the way and are continuing to learn, that ongoing commitment is really what will transform us to a more community-centered approach. I mean, there's a lot of things that I, wish that we had done differently. I think to your question earlier, Winona, that we just skipped over in terms of how our alliance was formed. Before our alliance was formed, we had a strong grassroots community-led movement that was advocating for food justice. And as our alliance developed, and I don't know if this is a story or experience that others have shared, but as our alliance developed and formed, the people that actually could come and participate in the alliance and network were really those within positions of privilege or power. And so those initial grassroots community organizers and residents and workers and farmers and fishermen that really started and seeded and have the wisdom of this movement were completely sidelined. And here we are now today trying to reverse that again. And so when you ask what could we have done differently, I wish that we had actually stayed true and listened to the community that we are now working so hard to try to center and engage.
Ooh, that was a lot of good advice. And really, that talking about reciprocal, that is such a change from the extractive kind of relationships that we see so often in society, but really thinking about reciprocation, trust, meaningful. Those are not so often things are just transactional. So that was really a lot. And I can relate to you as our organization was started grassroots. It has been a challenge, and we need to be intentional to keep it focused on the community, keep community welcomed, involved, and having a true voice. So that was really great. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Don't want to talk too much. I want you all to talk. So one of our questions that came from one of our attendees, what are your tips for dealing with conflict that comes up in trying to organize so many different people with so many different beliefs about what is the right move? Anybody want to take that?
I'll try to address that.
Okay.
Conflict, when you're making change, I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to be there waiting for you. The important thing is, no matter what the conflict is, do we have a small platform of common ground? Is the first thing I look at in conflict. Is where do we agree, if we agree in anything? And start there. Conflict also to address it, takes very committed and strong leadership and participation. And it takes a long haul of commitment as well. I've been in the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council for going on 4 or 5 years already. And when I came on, talking change, setting values, being strong at the table, and people were not friendly to me in making change. People did not like being addressed in conflict, and people did not like being called out for their racism, for their lack of knowledge of solid community as the first ones at the forefront of those effective policies. So it takes, when you come into that arena, it means be strong. It means talk with the truth, talk with your heart, and talk for all of those that aren't at the table, but you know them as your family, as your neighbors, as your colleagues, and you're there to represent them. And every time I'm in having to defend our words and our narrative and our ability to hold that narrative to truth, I think of all of my ancestors through generational racial inequities that never had the opportunity to speak. I think of my parents. They embedded that strength in me, but at the same time, they were never invited to speak at tables like where we're addressing root cause effects, where we are addressing systemic racism. So bring all of that strength with you to talk the truth, to make those positive changes. And that's what, in my experience, I always ground myself in that strength, ancestral strength, in defending land, water, seed, elements, community, and a way of life. Thank you.
Y'all are giving me chills. The wisdom at this table. Okay, I have another. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Or if not, I'll go to the next question from our attendees. Okay, I'll ask it. So how do you respond when white directors and BIPOC leaders and staff with internalized oppression react negatively or defensively when attempting to dismantle white supremacy culture? When I try to bring it out, the white people just gain sympathy. Anybody want to jump in on that one? Any from your experience, how you have dealt with that? How can you respond?
I would say shortly. I believe Helga just kind of addressed that as well, where she said like being grounded in her truths. I think that's the best way to address white supremacy. Always, try to be grounded in your truth. Take a deep breath, and don't let them get you into this back and forth petty thing, because that's going to pull you out of your character. So really stick to your so-called guns, and speak truth to power without compromising it in the least, and just encourage others to just really toughen up. I mean, I know a lot of times that we're not coming from a space that we're the sole controller, or we're running things, but I like to imagine myself as being a leader regardless of what space I'm in. I've already suffered and sacrificed and lost the brunt of whatever I'm going to lose. So I feel like I've already seen the rough side. So I would encourage anyone that, just be paying attention to the climate of the world, spiritual climate of the world, and how things are turning towards justice and transparency, and just put your confidence in that. You know what I mean? Your detractors, they're gonna, in the end, we don't want to crush them. That's why we say we resist the status quo instead of we destroy the status quo. We want to keep them around long enough to learn lessons from them, to struggle with them, to match their wits, go toe to toe with them, and then convey a strong, clear argument to where they will either side with us or they will make themselves clear opposition. So that's how I see it. Stay grounded.
I love that. Confidence, standing in your truth, and staying grounded. Anything else? I do have more questions, but if anybody else, if something is burning that they want to answer. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one then. So, what methods do you use? These are really some common themes. What methods do you use to involve people on the front line, as Helga has said, or more people who are more concerned with eating, as Michael said, and policy and advocacy? What are some of your some of the ways that you go about involving them? And anyone want to jump in on that one?
I can go ahead and address that. Like for us, we have a 320 weekly CSA that's basically for immigrant families that don't have immigration status, so they can't pay with SNAP or any of those other benefits. And we also target elderly populations, populations with disabilities, and single parents with small children. All of our food access program is equitable. We raise money every year to be able to provide that type of program. But the methods and how we address it, I think, for our food access program, excuse me, I lost a little bit track of. What was the main question? Because we were going around in a different.
Yeah, no, that some of the methods you use to involve people.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. As a tool, we use our newsletter that goes out with every CSA box every week. And with that, we are talking about climate change factors. But the most important piece, we talk about our limited water resources, because there's some very important votes coming up pretty soon here, dealing with economic development, housing development that is not healthy near our bosques that will drain water resources that are already being challenged. So we use that as a tool to really educate. Like we say, okay, you receive this bag weekly, but these are all the steps it takes for us to put this bag in your hands and you to the table. So it's really educating them in every step of the way, starting with the responsibility the farmer takes when he plants that seed. And the farmer takes all of the liability and doesn't know what it's going to come out, if it's going to come out good, positive, negative for his family when it's harvest time months later. And what we have to do in policy, permitting, all of these other pieces that people have no idea goes on behind the scene in order for us as a collective of farmers to provide that food access in an equitable way, and everything we have to do to keep it equitable. So for us, it's finding those tools. And now we have social media, we have a lot of other platforms that we can be messaging about, but our newsletter is really where we interact with our community that's actually eating the food. They give us information. You know what? You gave us arugula too much this month. Or in the recipes, the elders will say, I couldn't digest that. Is there another way to cook it? We give them recipes. And they also educate us on the quality, quantity, variety that they're receiving. If they attended any of the workshops, all of these pieces, it's a way to keep them engaged. So that is a method. It's how do we keep them engaged? How do we educate them? As they are receiving and tasting and eating and seeing the beauty of what is being grown within their neighborhoods. Thank you.
That is wonderful. Some really practical advice, that newsletter being so important. And I know on our Food Policy Council, we've often have food. We make it okay to bring your children. We have it in the evening. You can breastfeed at our table. Nobody's going to say a thing. Or if you have, some of our meetings, we make sure that there's a place that you can go or bring your children. So some of those practical things. Have any of those other things, anybody want to add anything to that around tools to make it comfortable to people to be involved?
I'm happy to add a few things. I think in addition to those tools, something that's worked for us has really been cultivating, because we're county-wide and a pretty large geographic area and very distinct neighborhoods and communities, we have cultivated a lot of partnerships with on-the-ground community-based organizations like Helga, your organization, Michael, your organization. We recognize that we're not the ones that are within those communities. So for us, a real important strategy has been to build those strong relationships with those organizers, whether they're organizers within neighborhoods or communities, or whether they're organizers around, young Black and brown farmers or fishermen or food businesses. But those organizers are the ones that we're able to then help to mobilize around any particular policy advocacy priorities or policy advocacy motions that come up. So I think that's something that has worked very, very well for us. And as we move forward, we are talking a lot about how we can create more support for the organizers to be able to mobilize the community and engage more in policy advocacy efforts. So that's something that is hopefully something we can continue to expand on.
Thank you. I have a quick follow-up question for Helga. Is your newsletter printed or is it electronic?
Both. Some do take it electronically and some don't have access, so we do both.
Thank you. Okay, we just have a couple more minutes. I'm going to jump to this question. What solutions have you found to combat climate change within your organization or your food policy councils? I know that's a big one for a minute. Anybody want to jump in? Any kind of solutions?
Well, I think for us, our solution has always been to build an effective farm to market system and distribution. And that is how we are addressing certain fragments of climate change by not participating in the carbon footprint of transportation, either going out or coming in. And actually doing that education within the state agencies that are investing in local food procurement is to let them know, like, this system that you have been working with for decades does not benefit the farmers, does not benefit us in any way as receiving healthy food, but also educating them on what we are addressing with climate change. I would like to say this briefly because it happened within the Policy Council, New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council. It was my first meeting sitting there at this table, governing board of the Policy Council. And climate change came up, and then somebody said, Helga, you need to stop using that word. You've been before committees using that word. And we're trying to pass, like, basically, keep it quiet because we want to pass this soil health bill. So for the greater good and the greater cause, don't be saying climate change. And first thing I said, we're here to educate. And as farmers, we know climate change is real. And it's been getting more aggressive every year for us. So how are we, you want to talk about soil health, but you don't want to talk about climate change, then we really got serious problems here. So there came the discussion period. Now, the Policy Council is all about advocating for climate change, advocating for that educational piece and civic engagement around climate change. So I'll leave it at that. I think I went over my minute.
No, and well, that was time well used. I'm going to give up a couple of minutes of my closing because I think these questions are more important. So there are a couple of questions that came in around either where you find hope or the work is hard that we do, and how do you care for yourself? So I'm going to go to each of you, and if you can give me a 30-second answer on that, where you either see hope or how you care for yourself spiritually, physically, doing this hard work. And I'll start with Sona.
Well, I mean, where we find hope, it's in the people, it's in the community, it's in the people that are, every day working to survive and build and resist and transform. That's the hope. And it really keeps me going. I've been doing this work for over 2 decades, and I have never lost my motivation to continue to grow and do more work and push for what I believe is right. So the people in the community and the second part of this question, I mean, we could have a whole nother session on this. This is real hard. It's really hard, and it's a daily struggle. But I, try to take time for myself to be able to center myself, to breathe, to, meditate, to yoga, really fall into the parts of myself that are part of my ancestry, getting into yoga, Ayurveda. These are the things that really fill me and usually recharge me. And so it always feels good to have this space to be able to go back to my lineage and my heritage.
Okay, I think we might have to leave it there because we got to wrap it up so we can hear the band. But this conversation, there were such themes, such rich answers and things shared in this presentation, in this discussion. And what I hope is that tomorrow, although it's virtual, that we'll be able to continue some of those conversations. If we find ourselves in some of these discussions and be able to use some of these things and talk about it. Also, after this is over, we're now all connected, not just us on the panel, but everybody at this forum. We are now connected. We have connections that we can reach out to one another. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to do this hard work by ourselves. There are people out here across the country engaging in this work of shifting the food system to one that works for the community and then one that is designed by the community and incorporates racial equity and social justice and food justice. So I'm just, you all, this has been a really, really wonderful discussion to be a part of. Thank you for allowing me to moderate it. And thank you for sharing the way that you did. With that, I will hand it back to Mary, who will get us into our last activity of listening to some music and having a good time. Thank you.
Great. That was an amazing panel. I was sitting here listening to it, and I just thought it was amazing. I'm so excited now, though. I mean, we need to relax. We did some really pretty heavy thinking through that panel. And again, just thank you so much for those words, like real, honest conversation. So we're going to now go into the one of the things that Kansas City is just really well known for, and that is our jazz history in Kansas City. So we're going to go into listening to the James Ward Band, and I'm going to bring Teresa Kelly from the Kansas City Food Hub, who's been working a relatively newly formed hub there. She's been working as a policy advocate, grassroots organizer, and urban farm business consultant. And also Dina Newman is the director of the University of Missouri Kansas City Center for Neighborhoods. And she's been doing a lot of engagement work using the an equity lens. And I think, Dina, you probably just thought that panel was also just amazing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to turn it over to them right now and for some of our wonderful Kansas City jazz. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Dina and Teresa.
Thank you, Mary. Holy cow, Dina. It's time.
I know, right? What a great discussion.
I know. Everything has been so full. I feel really cerebral and centered and excited and really ready to take some time to relax.
Exactly. And that is what we are going to usher in at this moment. So like Mary said, welcome to our food policy social hour. I feel like I need to get my DJ voice on. So we are broadcasting live from my dining room in Kansas City, Missouri. Where are you broadcasting from, Teresa?
I'm broadcasting from our office /sunroom /dining room because of COVID.
and you're on the KCK side?
I'm in Roland Park, Kansas, so I'm on the Kansas side. So we're a bi-state arrangement today.
There we go.
Yeah, so often we are in our work.
Absolutely. So like we said, we want you to relax, grab a drink, or, you know what, depending on where folks are, it's legal, right? In some places to have other things that you need to relax. Just saying, not Missouri or Kansas yet. So grab what you need, take care of yourself. We want you to relax, get comfortable. get ready to hear some of Kansas City's best jazz. So over the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to have an opportunity to enter the discussion room with a small group to hang out, exchange phone numbers, chat, relax, whatever it is you want to do. But again, this is your time to unwind and to get to talk and chat with a few folks and to get your groove on.
And that's right. I'm really excited because I'm not familiar with the James Ward Band. So I'm just excited to experience this myself for the first time, Dina.
They are an amazing band. They are a family band. They really represent an exciting variety of jazz fusion. Their infectious groove can be found on 2 releases, Groove Axis and
Awesome.
In Perspective, available on Apple Music and eMusic. Both James and Angela are graduates of Florida A&M University, and Jalen, their son, is currently attending Kansas City, Kansas Community College. He's studying audio engineering. The Ward family will be featuring tonight Dugan Smith, who's an active saxophonist on the Kansas City scene.
Hey.
Dugan is a graduate of the University of Wyoming with a master's in jazz studies.
Wow.
Dugan also released an indie record self-titled Not From Here, not K-N-O-T, really cool, Not From Here, available on Apple Music and Spotify. So you can follow the James Ward's Band on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and please subscribe to their YouTube channel, the James Ward Band Official. So again, sit back, get ready to hear some of Kansas City's best jazz. We will turn it over to James Ward Band.
Yeah. Welcome.
Well, we are back.
We're in the show, it says.
And we are in the show. We're back. I think there was some sound difficulties and they're going to get worked out. So in the meantime, let me just tell you a little bit what I know about the Ward Family Band. I don't know how many people know this, but they also, this kind of ties into the food policy piece. They also distribute something called Callie's Seasonings. Fresh herbs and spices in a season that is delicious on everything from veggies to barbecue. And yes, Risa, I'm going to talk about barbecue at some point.
Yeah, I did some homework. Yeah, we'll talk about barbecue.
Okay. You can't be in Kansas City and not talk about barbecue.
Or not have known barbecue. I mean.
Or, yeah, not probably have to get off this call and go get some barbecue.
That's right. On my way to the barn, I'll be stopping to get barbecue.
All right, there you go. So again, the Ward family, they're Cali Seasonings. I used to see them at the farmer's market. They had their stand up and they were selling this great seasoning. I believe it's a recipe, a family recipe. So that's really, really cool as well. And the fact that they are a family band, I love that. I also remember James and Angela teaching free music lessons to kids in our communities of concern. So they have great hearts, give back to the community. They're just wonderful, wonderful family.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know if we've got our sound ready or not. Sound folk, are we ready to bring on the James Ward Band?
Or we can show people how to make cocktails.
We can do that. I was thinking about, what can you do for music?
Here we go.
I was getting ready to bring out the cowbell. I'm so glad you're here. All right, we'll turn it back over to the James Ward Band.
Thank you. That was True or False by Ray Obiedo. You're listening to James Ward on bass, Jalen Ward on drums, Dugan Smith on saxophone, and I am Angela Ward. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Angela. I had to get up out of this chair for a minute, y'all. I'm going. Right?
Oh yeah, I know. And I for some reason made this fabulous chocolate martini, and it's just the perfect thing to go with your sound. I am just thrilled to no end to meet you this way. However disconnected we are through this. One thing I wanted to remind everybody as we move forward that I think I'm getting directions in my ear or on the screen. You go to community and then to discussions, and you can split off and have little discussions. You can fade in and out with the music and do what you wish. Socialize a little bit.
Yeah, so imagine if you were in person, you were, down at the gym theater where the band was playing, or you were at the Blue Room and you wanted to go have a little quiet. Look at me, I'm getting all kind of jazzy and kind of, have a little quiet conversation. You can do that virtually. So like Teresa said,
right.
you go to community and then discussion. And I think you can pop in and out, but you're certainly welcome to stay where you are, sit seated and enjoy this great music. Teresa, I grabbed me an adult drink. That's what we call that here.
Yeah, cheers.
Yes. Okay. All right.
And I may not be sitting the whole time, but I'm going to be relaxing the whole time.
Exactly. I'm like party on top, but on bottom, it's like slippers, it's just like relax. So after I listen to this great music, I can just kind of slide on into bed and just,
That's awesome.
So I guess we'll turn it back over to the James Ward Band.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Did y'all see them little fingers, Angela, little fingers on those keys, getting down with the get down? Oh my goodness! Wow,
Right.
wow! And Mr. Ward blowing the horn with the guitar strapped on him, and the saxophonist, and the drum. Man, you guys, it's been a while since I heard you all. I think I heard you last time at a farmer's market. Again, they are out in the community. They support the market.
Yes.
But it's been a while since I've been in a club. That's why I'm wearing my sparkly clothes, because,
Yes.
I don't get out much anymore. You guys, I'm a mom of 4 with 2 grandkids. So this is as good as I'm getting with the nightclub tonight. And I am enjoying it.
I wore my hard pants tonight.
Okay.
This is so awesome. And I haven't had a chocolate martini in over a year, and it's so awesome. I may skip the barn tonight and have another martini while I'm listening to the second part. You are going to play for another 20 minutes, right?
Angela's just smiling. Come on, Angela. Let's bring it on. You guys
That's
sing
right.
it so
When
good.
everything clears up, we're going to take you all on the road with us so that you can be our hype people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would love that.
I would too, because, just Teresa and I are not getting paid tonight, because I don't think anybody in their right mind would pay us. But yeah, absolutely. We would definitely go hang out with you all.
I'm going to turn it in on my timesheet and see if I can slip it through.
Okay. All right.
There you go. Hey, we have a YouTube channel called the JWB Official. If
I
you'd
love
like
that.
to, tune in after this, you can always sign in on YouTube and subscribe. We're the JWB Official, and our website is www.thejwb.com.
Yeah.
Everybody here has their own Instagram. Dugan Smith has his own Instagram. Jalen has J Ward Music, and James has his, which is James Ward Art and Sound. Now, I should know that by heart, but you know why I don't? Because he does Cali seasonings, he builds bases, he has so many different businesses. He's just the Renaissance man.
That's awesome.
And I'm so glad they don't have microphones. It's so good.
So,
They
Dina and I are
cracking me
having
up,
this side chat with one of our friends during the music. We're socializing, and we've decided we're going to have a girls' night the next time we can go see you. And so with the YouTube channel, we can invite everybody who isn't here in Kansas City and lucky enough to see you in person to have your own girls' night like we're doing.
Yes.
Hey, Dina, I
That'd
haven't
be
seen your
fun.
cocktail in a while.
There it is.
That would be really fun.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
yes.
not getting any lower.
Well, y'all, you know what? I have to pace myself, Teresa.
Well, that's what this is for. You do water.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I will.
Oh, look, there's our byline.
We'll take it on the road. Anyone else?
That's right.
Hey, just
That's
get
right.
in touch with us. Get in touch with us.
We
jazz
can-
is
we
very,
can
very
quit
important.
We can quit our day jobs. and
There
just
you go.
Promote jazz. We
There
can
you go.
promote Kansas City jazz. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Let's go. Thank you. We're going to play a familiar tune now. Some of you might catch it, some of you might not. But if you get it, if you know what it is, it's going to tell us what your age is. So you don't have to say anything if you if you recognize this tune. And before we play it, I want to give a shout out to James Ward Jr., who's operating the camera and getting all these great angles for you. James is a graduate of Kansas City Art Institute. He graduated a couple of years ago, and he came down here and helped us out with this audio visual. We want to thank him for that, and thank Jalen for the audio of this wonderful mix we have. Thank everybody, thank all of you for even listening and tuning in. Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you, Dina, for thinking of us, and Karen and everybody that had something to do with putting this all together. We appreciate you. Thank you for thinking of the James Ward Band. And we hope that we can do this again, and hopefully in person soon. So we're going to play another number for you. Name that tune.
Wow. Wow. Mr. James Ward, you on that bass. Wow.
That was Dugan Smith on saxophone, Jalen Ward on drums, James Ward on bass and trumpet, and I am Angela Ward. Thank you all so much for having us. We hope you enjoyed.
Wow. Wow. I'm not hearing you, Teresa. They shut you up for some reason. Okay. I thought I was gonna have to do the solo thing. I was ready. Okay. You back.
I'd rather them play another song than read all this stuff.
Well, let me first say, okay, so Angela, you said we may have to date ourselves. So when I first heard it, this is how far I'm going back. At first I thought, is that Mary Tyler Moore? I mean, I'm going way back, right? And then I sent Teresa a text and I'm like, Cheers? And I was like, no. And so Teresa says, what did you say, Teresa?
Taxi.
Yeah. That was it?
Mm-hmm.
It never sounded that good though on TV.
But, I only know that from reruns. I didn't see it originally.
Yeah. 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 That was a fantastic version. Like I said,
Yes.
I've never heard it sound that good.
Yeah, I would never have watched the show. I would just have listened to the music the whole time. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. We enjoyed it.
Wow. I can't wait to see you in person.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody remember, you can have an experience of your own through YouTube. The magic of electronics and modern technology. I think that's amazing. One of the gifts we have. And we've all learned to be experts at it now, right? For the last year and a half.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? Hey, the clubs are opening up. Kansas City has over 40, I believe, active jazz clubs in town. Our famous 18th and Vine area. You may even be able to see the Ward family there at the Blue Room, at the Gym Theater. Maybe I don't know. So I'm just telling folks who are, we have people at this conference from all over the country. Come to Kansas City, make this your destination spot. Come hear the Ward family. Have some barbecue, right?
Yeah, you can join Dina and I on our next night out.
We may be sitting on a corner, with a table and some play mics, but hey, we're ready to put the show on the road, right?
We'll be playing the road. We'll be playing the role of promoter. Right?
Absolutely. All right.
So, we'll be playing again on October 2nd at the Blue Room.
Okay.
So we will be there. It's located on the 18th and Vine. And then we're also giving a music workshop called Show and Shed on October 16th at the Gym Theater. That's from 10 to 4. So if you have any kids or those that are young at heart that would like to come out and play instruments and learn something and play in an ensemble, we'll be performing at 2:30 on October 16th. And have instruction from 10 a.m. until 2. It'll be a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's another reason to come to Kansas City, or for those who live here in town, make sure you get that information. Come out.
Yes.
I have witnessed them. I have witnessed how they are just so patient and wonderful, even with families. I've seen families come out and do music lessons with them, and it's just been amazing. So yeah, support the James Ward Family Band and the good work that they do. So Angela, team, let me see, Jalen and Dugan and Mr. Ward, thank you all so much for an incredible evening. I just so much enjoy hearing you all and giving back to the community. So again, thank you so very much. Teresa, did we have some public service announcements?
And I want to add the man at the tech board, the one behind the camera.
James Ward Jr.
There you go. There you go. Yay! When my kids were little, I always made my husband go into the bathroom and take a picture of himself in the mirror so that people would know he was actually around.
That he existed?
Yeah.
That he really existed? Yes. And James Ward Jr., what instrument he plays? Because I believe he plays an instrument too, right, Angela?
Yes. He's working on saxophone and he plays bass and tuba.
Yeah.
I think she said saxophone, yeah.
And bass and tuba.
I'm sorry.
And bass?
Yes, he plays, he's working on saxophone and he also plays bass and tuba.
Oh my gosh, wow.
In middle school.
Wow, that was never a quiet house, was it?
Never, ever, never.
I bet sometimes you wanted earplugs.
All right.
It's all right. I had a trumpet and a cello in my house. Yeah. It's all part of the process, right?
Yeah. It's the one thing we can all come together on, in these trying times, just this last year with the pandemic, racial reckoning, all the things that are happening across the world. Music seems to be that stabilizer.
It really does.
Yeah.
It just brings everybody together.
It does.
So since I've had a martini, I'll get all verklempt if I keep going on about that. Thank you so much for the James Ward Band. I'm going to go ahead and run off this official stuff like they do at the Oscars when they have the accountants read their stuff. I'll go ahead and do that because
just Teresa, just don't act like you're one of your city council meetings.
I'll try
okay?
not to. I'll
Thank
try
you.
not to get real like
Don't get all city council. Okay.
So tomorrow we start at 9. I'm guessing that's a.m. Pacific time, 11 Central time. Is that correct? I'll ask the producers to send me a message if it's not. So we all need to prepare to get ready to dive into the last day of the forum. It has been such a full day and a half so far. So progressive and therapy healers will lead you through a meditation exercise to start the day off to prepare body, mind, and spirit for a day of full learning again. Afterward, we invite you to reflect on the theme of the event, power, how it shows up, where it needs to be built, and how to give it up. Yeah, so to keep balance. Then select your deep dive session for the morning and the afternoon, because tomorrow is all about action. We wanted folks who came to this conference to not just get filled up with information and contacts, but to actually leave with a new network of people for support and a toolbox to be able to use in their own communities. So tomorrow, our closing session features a spoken word poetry by Kansas City writer, educator, artist, and justice advocate Natasha Ria Elskari, along with remarks from Representative Sharice Davids. I am so blessed to have her as my representative in Kansas 3rd District. So join us for a conversation about how we, as a network, can harness our power to cultivate equitable policy through collective action. We're hoping you can take away those tools, and we hope this starts a wave of action across the country, across all boundaries. I know we have people from all over attending. So, okay.
All right. Well, Teresa, we're gonna ask the Ward family to take us on out of here with one last song, if they don't mind.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh, look, Dina.
Hey, if we don't get some gigs out of this, Teresa, I don't know what we can do.
I know.
And
we're so easy to hire and
exactly. All right, Miss Angela Ward, James Ward, Blaine, I'm going to ask you to take us on out of here.
There you
Thank
go.
you all so much.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Go ahead. Let me see what type of do footprint.
Dina.